Uh-oh. Oh, there you are. Okay, great. I just almost lost you guys there.
Okay.
I was going to do it on my computer, and I'm in the middle of doing pictures for my coffee table book. And all of a sudden this came up. So I'm on my phone rather than my laptop. So I'm seeing one person at a time. I don't know whether on the computer I would have everybody
Can you swipe it? If you swipe it.
Let me see what's going on here.
If you swipe it, you can see everybody.
Swipe which direction on the phone?
I think.
Do you have little dots at the bottom?
Oh yeah, hold on just a minute. Oh, there we are. It's to the left.
And now you can see everybody. Hi, Sherry.
What a handsome grouping, I'll tell you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Continuing on our series of musical icons, today is extra special because we have the incomparable Leland Sklar. This multi-talented rock royalty has performed on more than 2,600 albums, from James Taylor to Barbra Streisand to Phil Collins to Jackson Browne. And even though this great man is a very humble man, he does have that Midas touch, because whatever he gets involved in turns to gold. You can hear his musical talents in such classic TV shows as The Rockford Files, Hill Street Blues, The A-Team, and Magnum P.I. He's a Rock and Roll Walk Hall of Fame inductee, and it is with great honor and pride that we welcome to the show, Mr. Leland Sklar.
Welcome.
I am so thrilled to be here. I cannot even put it into words.
No,
this
we are.
No, we are.
Mr. Sklar, I found some interesting.
Call me Lee. Call me Lee. Call me Lee.
Yes,
Mr. Sklar was my father.
Honor. With honor, Lee. Leland, I discovered that you actually won an award when you were 7 years old for playing the piano. So the musical gift is innately within you, and so I'm curious, how did you go from playing piano to being like a rock god playing bass guitar?
Well, it didn't. The transition didn't go from piano to rock god. The transition went from piano to bass. And what happened was, when I entered junior high school, I had been playing piano since I was 4, and I kind of went in with the attitude that at 12 years old that I would be the piano player. And the music teacher, his name was Theodore Lynn, said, "We have lots of piano players. We need a string bass player." And he pulled an old K upright out of the back room and put it in my hands, and I showed me how to hold it. I plucked one note and felt that vibration, and I said, "Sold. I'm your bass player." And he gave me rudimentary lessons on what it was about, and then I got a teacher, and never looked back. I really, at that point, was kind of burnt. Even at 12, I was kind of burned out with the piano. I had really been working at it for so many years, playing classical and doing lots of recitals, that it was a welcome relief to suddenly be trying a new instrument. And then here I am. It's time marches on.
I have Leland, I have a high school friend, and his name is Ferdy Belland, and he actually plays with the band Biff Naked. And it was your 1971 Casey Kelly album that actually, this is how powerful and magnetic you are. Because of that, he became a bass player. And so thank you for that, because we're very proud of him in our hometown.
Oh, that's fantastic. And it's been years since I've heard Casey's name. I really enjoyed working with Casey. That's great that had an influence on somebody. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, all the way in Canada. We're very proud.
Leland, when you think of
Yes, sir.
the reunion of the Troubadour, and what are some of the memories that come back? Because that documentary was very, very good. I think of Steve Martin being there. I think of Carol Bayer being there. I mean, and obviously James Taylor. But it was very interesting because it's an iconic time in Southern California, and that rock and roll.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still classic. I still listen to it today. Almost every day, I'm listening to that classic rock, to those memories. And then I would have never have known throughout the years, I would have met the people from the Wrecking Crew and from the Motown sound, those iconic musicians who played on all the Motown sound, if you can imagine that. You're in there.
Yeah.
as far as being one of those iconic people. And it's an honor to have you on. But like I said, what are your thoughts of all of that stuff? Thinking Troubadour, things like that.
Well, it was almost kind of everything's in hindsight now when we talk about these. So, I can look back at it and think that really was like one of the golden ages of the music scene when I hooked up with James Taylor, and then then suddenly there's Linda Ronstadt and Jackson Browne and all the people that came out of that. And all of them, everybody went through the Troubadour. I mean, Elton John's first gigs in Los Angeles were at the Troubadour. I'd see Cat Stevens, Carly Simon. I mean, you sort of name it. And the Troubadour was really one of like the Whiskey A Go-Go. It was one of those iconic places to play. And when we played there the first time with James Taylor, our band was myself, Russ Kunkel, Danny Korchmar, and our piano player was Carole King.
Wow.
And James and we were all encouraged Carole to kind of maybe step out from behind where she was sitting at the piano and do some of her own material, because nobody really knew who she was, but people had seen the name Goffin and King for years, because Carole was a major songwriter back when she was a teenager, writing things like The Locomotion and all these amazing songs. And so we did the first gigs, and then Carole kind of then decided to go in the studio and ends up cutting Tapestry. And so needless to say, we had to find a new keyboard player, because we had a side person in the group who had the biggest record in the world going at that point. But the Troubadour was a remarkable experience for everybody. And when they decided to do they were celebrating, I think it was the 50th anniversary of the Troubadour. And so they came to Peter Asher, I believe, who was managing and producing James Taylor back in the day, about us doing a reunion and playing at the Troubadour for a week with the original band, with Russ, Cooch, myself, and Carole. And and there's the old adage where people say, you can't go home. Well, we actually got to go home, and it was really cool. And it went so well that we ended up doing like an arena tour based on it. And it was one of the biggest tours of the year. It was like 2 years after we played the Troubadour, and we called it the Troubadour Reunion Tour. So, but so much history in that building.
Yeah, I think it's a tragedy, because isn't the Troubadour closing? If I'm not mistaken, I think because of COVID, they're closing.
Yeah, there's so much talk about so many things closing at this point. You just don't know.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. There could be talk about it, and who knows, maybe some group of people might come in and say, no, it has to stay open, and they're willing to bankroll it or something. Who knows?
I think it would be a tragedy for the Troubadour to close. I mean, I grew up hanging out in the Sunset Strip, and seeing bands in the late 80s. And I mean, there's just so much history there. And I had a friend, I just went to see at the Whiskey, a friend's band play there. And it's just, even when you walk in there, it's just, I don't know, there's just there's a spiritual connection being in those buildings. Well, all the great artists that have gone through there.
Yeah, well, it's for me, it's like when I work at Capitol Records or, those places, and you walk down those hallways, and the weight of history sits on your shoulders big time. And you bring your A+ game to those things, because you're looking at the walls and you're seeing Sinatra and Nat King Cole and Judy Garland and the Beatles and, all these people lining the walls that have been down that same hallway. And with the Troubadour, it's one of those places. And the Whiskey, all those, there's so few of those clubs left at this point, but it would be a tragedy for the place to shut down. I mean, it's a funky joint. It's, you're not like losing, the Taj Mahal. It's a funky old building, but the history of it it'll never be repeated. So I'm praying that something will do it. But through the COVID experience now, so many places that you would have never in a million years thought would ever, be closing up, are closing up. So you just don't know from day to day.
Yeah, I'm in Redondo Beach, California, and St. Rock is here in Hermosa.
Mhm.
and a lot of bands play there, and that's one of my favorite places to go to. And tragically, they're closing. I'm so heartbroken because that is just like it's like such a great venue to see bands, and it's
Yeah.
just I don't know, it's just sad.
I think Bogies is closing too up in Westlake Village, and that's
Mhm.
where our group, the Immediate Family, we've played there a bunch of times.
Yeah.
And it's become kind of like a stomping grounds for us. And then we just found out, I think, that they're closing up. So it's heartbreaking. I mean, the devastation, especially in the entertainment industry, that this disease is wreaking is unbelievable. I mean, my book was packed through February of next year, and it's totally empty. I mean, every gig was either very, very postponed or totally canceled because they were time-sensitive gigs that if they didn't happen, maybe next year it'll happen again because they were annual events. But it's every musician I talk to is really struggling at this point. Not necessarily everybody struggling financially, but certainly emotionally, they're all struggling because this is our life's blood, is playing for people and recording and all that. And it's scary. It's real scary.
So what have you been doing in this time during COVID?
I've been busier than I've ever been. It's so surreal. What I did was, like, when all this started, we had just finished almost 2.5 years on the road with Phil Collins. It was, off and on, but we basically did pretty much a world tour called the Not Dead Yet Tour, which is aptly titled for Phil. But when it was over, I had guys writing to me going, we saw you guys in such and such place, and it was in a stadium or something like that. And they said, we could hear you, but we couldn't hear all the details. So I kind of thought, maybe I got Michel Collin, our front of house mixer, to send me one of the shows from Adelaide, Australia. It was a really good show. And I said, if you could send me that. And what I did was I would play it through my computer, and I had a little speaker next to me that I could play this mix in, and then I put an amp next to me, and I recorded my bass parts on top of the thing so you could hear every note of them exactly, and just recorded it on my phone like we're talking. And I put a couple of them up on YouTube, and all of a sudden people started going, "We love your channel." And I go, "What are you talking about?" And I had no idea I had created a channel. And it's really taken off. I've posted a song every day since the first one I did. I haven't missed a day, and I've got about 130,000 people following me, like, voraciously. And I formed a clubhouse that people can join that, and I'm doing 2 live streams a month from that and fielding questions. And then I've got another level of that, which is one-on-one Skype or FaceTime calls. And so I'm doing that. It's really occupying because once I finished Phil's show, then I've gone into stuff. I did Dr. My Eyes. I've done Stratus that I cut with Billy Cobham. I've done, I was getting ready. I might do some Bette Midler today that I worked on. So every day I'm discovering, old songs and then telling stories about the recording process and who was there. And then also during all this period, since 2004, I've been taking pictures of people going and flipping me off. And it all started on Phil Collins' tour. Well, about 3/4 of the way through putting together a coffee table book, because I've got about 11,000 photographs now of people flipping me off, from the music business, sports, actors, people on the streets. And I'm working with a wonderful guy who does art books, and I just got off the phone with him, and I'm going to see him tomorrow. We're trying to have that out for Christmas, so I'm getting ready to start a Kickstarter to get the whole thing launched. And it's crazy because when I'm working, I'm not this busy. It's and taking care of. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Leland, I've been watching your YouTube channel, and again, everyone, it's called Leland Sklar. And it is so great. I watched the episode where you did Running on Empty with Jackson Browne. And like I
Right.
said, it's almost like a living history, but Leland is performing while the song is playing. And it really put a spotlight on his gift and talent. And I was curious, I know that so many people say that you're a standout and you're not an average bass player. And I didn't understand if that has anything to do because you manipulate the entire guitar when you're playing. And I don't know if that's part and part of, again, your history in piano that gives you that greater range of sound, because it truly is a unique sound to you.
Well, I live inside my skin. I don't see any of it. I don't know. I guess it's for others to comment on, because I sit there, when I have friends like Victor Wooten and people like that, and then I just kind of think, what am I doing? Look at this guy. So yeah, I understand my position, but I've always been a song person, and for me, that's really what it's all about. I try to find parts that will justify why I'm there, because like starting with James Taylor was a challenge, because James is one of the most comprehensive guitarists I've ever worked with. When he's playing, he's got a thumb that's constantly playing bass parts. And so for me, when I started with him, I had to kind of figure out, what am I going to do with this guy? Because I'm either going to, ape his parts and play along with him, or I'm going to figure out other parts that weave around him. And I was a huge fan of like McCartney and that melodic style of playing. So I just kind of, I found my own voice, but really I'm not sure what it is or how I found it or anything. I've always just told people, I said, more than anything, I'm proud to be a part of the bass community. And that's pretty much it. There's so many people that I'm fans of that are just fabulous players. And I'm just happy to be a part of it. Every day I'm humbled by the people I see play. So.
Leland,
Well,
favorite songs
Brian,
from Phil
I'm
Collins?
sorry, Brian.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sherry. Sherry.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, Brian.
One of my favorite songs from Phil Collins is not one that normally people know. It's called "Lonely Man on the Corner." I just love that because I don't know why. For me, it's so meaningful.
That's what it's supposed to be. For you, everything's an individual, and everybody's touched by different things. So that's cool that you found that.
Talk about when you knew that you were going to be inducted to the Hall of Fame. What was that feeling like for you?
Well, what it is the thing that I'm a part of, the Hall of Fame, is the Guitar Center in Hollywood has the Rock Walk Hall of Fame, and they inducted a bunch of bass players into it. They inducted Jocko, his family came down to it. Larry Graham was there. God, it's been so long now. Bootsy, I think, was there. There was a whole
Carol
bunch of
Kay
us.
in there too?
Carol Kay is in there with the Wrecking Crew, because the Wrecking Crew was inducted. But that's the kind of Hall of Fame. As far as like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or any of those things, the guys like me don't get inducted into those things.
Yeah, but you belong in it anyhow.
Well, we can always have that discussion, but they've got their own set of who they want to have in, and it's usually bands or artists. It's usually very rarely the sidemen, which is what I think is so nice down in Nashville, is they have their own way of honoring the players down there, and it's great. But I'm really happy to be a working musician at this point. I mean, I really started touring when I was about 21, and I'm 73 now, and I'm still as busy as I can handle. Especially when the pandemic isn't happening. There's lots of good things still going on, and we've got a brand new band that's happening, and it's amazing. I just figure keep moving forward. That's what it's all about.
Leland, the bands that you have performed with, and I don't mean any disrespect to any of the bands, but your range is amazing because you've gone from country, to folk to rock and roll. Is there a genre in particular that might be your favorite?
I would say not really. Because I find value. I mean, I'm a rock and roll guy at heart. So, I mean, if I can just crank up and kick some butt, I'm really happy. But I also really enjoy them all. They all have their own unique qualities. They have their own unique musicians and artists that are in them. And being a studio musician, having a career at that really requires you to be open to everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I never know, when I show up at work many times, I have no idea what kind of music I'm going to be working on that day. I mean, it could be a country project, it could be a techno project, it could be a hip hop project. I just don't know. So you've got to be kind of on top of everything and kind of have your fingers in the pot all the time. But I really enjoy it all. And it's once again, like I said, it's an amazing community. And there's a thread that's a common thread that weaves through all of the different genres. And I just really enjoy it. It's really, I pinch myself all the time. Besides the fact it's just fun to pinch myself. I'm always still amazed, by everything that goes on. And I'm still, in awe. Sometimes I'll walk in a studio and I'll see somebody, like the first time I worked with Joe Cocker, and I walked in and I looked at him, I went, that's Joe Cocker. Man, worked with Andy Griffith on 2 albums. And I'm sitting there going, that's Andy Griffith. Oh my God. And each of those has just, special meanings to me. I really, I've retained a lot about all of the sessions. And that's the fun about doing the YouTube thing, is just being able to tell stories about all of these experiences. And,
I'd always read and heard about Andy Griffith being such a kind and gentle man. And I did hear you speak about one time when you were working with him that, you came home one day and there was an answering message from him. And it just defined him as, he was that character on his show, that he was just a kind and genuine spirit.
Yeah, I come home and my answering machine's flashing and I hit it and all I hear is, hey, Lee, Andy here in North Carolina, just check in, see how you're doing and stuff. We became really close friends. But the best thing was when we were in the studio, it was after he had done Matlock and all that stuff. And he had this beautiful, thick white hair. And he just looked over and he said, who would have thought at this age I'd have all this beautiful white hair and Opie'd be bald?
No.
I almost passed out. I was laughing so hard. But it's all these things, doing this channel has been interesting because I'm like going through trying to find projects I work on, and I'm finding stuff I totally forgot about and kind of digging it up and relearning a song and talking about it. So it's been an adventure. It's exciting for me.
Lee, do you have a preferred bass guitar that you like, or is your go-to, or does it depend on the music?
Depends on the music, but like right next to me, this isn't a setup, folks. I'm talking to you from where I do my videos. So, but here's right here. This is my main old instrument. I call it Frankenstein because this was never an instrument. This was a body that I bought from a company called Charvel. I had this neck, which was a 1962 Precision Fender neck, but I like jazz bass, so we reshaped it. So it's all pieces. These are like the very early EMG pickups that they started manufacturing. And then the thing is absolutely covered with autographs, and I've got everybody from Jeff Porcaro to it's kind of you name it on here. What do we got? I mean, it's just there's hundreds and hundreds of signatures on it. So this is really my favorite workhorse. We built it in _73, and I've probably used it on about 85% of everything I've done since '73. But I've got a Dingwall bass made by Sheldon Dingwall up in Saskatoon, Canada, and that's my go-to 5-string. And then I have a semi-acoustic bass that I have with Warwick Bass Company out of Germany.
You know what would be
and I use euphonic audio amplifiers too. I'll throw in a hit for the cats at Euphonic Audio too.
It would be almost
Okay.
be interesting if you would have your particular guitar, and then you could have a history of where it was performed on albums and things like that. So you know what I mean, the history of that guitar and who it's performed with, almost, because you're so diverse.
Well, the thing is, like, if you go back, like, if you went on All Music and looked at my discography, that bass is on almost that entire discography on there. And then there's videos like with Phil Collins and stuff, like from our '85 tour, that's the bass I used on the tour, and it's in videos and things with him. But at the end of the day, there's a famous old story, and I think it might have been about Chet Atkins. That's who I heard it attributed to, where he was playing in a club and some guy came up to him and said, "That's the most beautiful sounding guitar I've ever heard." And he went, "Thank you." And the guy went and sat down. He played a couple more songs. The guy came up again and said, "I just have to tell you, that guitar is amazing." And then third time he came walking up, Chet set the guitar in the stand and he goes, "How's it sound now?" Because it's, they're basically they're a tool. It's how you use it and what you do with it. And so, I love the bass and everything, but to me, I'll play anything that's put in my hands. I'm really not a gearhead. I'm not that particular about it. I love that bass, but if I didn't have it, I'd still be playing. So, yeah.
Leland, every day I pretend that I can play bass, whether it's I'm listening to James or if I'm pretending I'm Gene Simmons. And one time I told Gene Simmons, "Gene, I pretend I'm you a couple times a week. Let me go rock and roll." And he just busted out and cracked. And then his son goes, "What's that song, Dad? I've never heard of it before." Because his son had never listened to anything regarding Kiss. But it's an honor because
wow.
I think it's one of those things. If I wasn't a drummer, I would have learned to play bass. And I still might learn because I just think it's just a brilliant instrument.
Yeah. I mean, don't ever, it's like I get people who say, "Do you think I'm too old to start?" And I go, "No, you're never too old to start on anything. You may not have a career with it, but you can certainly have pleasure with it." And for me, a lot of times just sitting up here in this room and just playing along with stuff, I'm having a great time. There's no audience, there's no nothing. It's just me enjoying playing the instrument. And I sit there and I'll like run, like I'll do the show we just did with Phil, and I'll play the songs and I'll change them. I'll play them just for myself, adding and subtracting things and all that, because I just find it, I find it an interesting thought process all the time, just coming up with parts. And that's what my whole career has been based on, is you show up at work, you have a blank canvas, and at the end of the day, the people want to have a finished painting. And you don't have the luxury of saying, maybe we'll come back tomorrow. Don't feel it today. You're on the line. This is sometimes career life and death that for somebody that day. They've booked 6 hours or something, and they've got their songs. And if you don't get them, then they may never be gotten. So there's a high stress pressure level to doing studio work, but it's also an incredibly joyous, rewarding thing. And over the years, you learn how to not choke when the red light comes on. You make that when your best parts come out, rather than feeling like now I'm on under the gun and now I'm going to make mistakes and stuff. But I'm very fortunate to live in LA, because the caliber of musicians in this town is so staggering that anytime you walk into work, you're sitting with the best players in the world, and it raises your own bar all the time. So, but just to play and enjoy it, man, grab a bass. There's a lot of basses out there that are really good and that aren't expensive, and you can just have something, get a little amp, plug in, start figuring it out and playing along with things you like. And once you learn one song and you do it, you go, "This is great. This is so cool." And and who knows? You might get really good, and next thing you know, you're playing gigs. Yeah.
Leland, what is your preference? Do you prefer being in the studio, or do you like playing live on stage?
I've told people in the past that if I had to make a choice, I would choose touring, playing live over the studio. It's kind of like I always equated to, as much as I'm a gearhead and I love cars, I would rather be driving the race car than wrenching the race car. And that's the way I kind of look at the studio. I love the process, but the thing I love about live is as soon as I play a note, the note's over. It's done. You're moving on to the next note. In the studio, you could play that note and you could be sitting with people that are going to scrutinize that note for the rest of the day. And I don't, you know, I love making records, but I really love playing in front of an audience and feeling that energy. And it doesn't have to be big audiences. One of the people I work with is Judith Owen, who's married to Harry Shearer from Spinal Tap and The Simpsons, and she's a magnificent singer-songwriter, pianist. And I remember we were in the north of England playing, and we were playing like pubs and stuff. And we were in this pub and there was like, I don't know, 45, 50 people in the place. And this guy came up to me afterwards. He goes, God, the last time I saw you, you were in Wembley Stadium. What are you doing here? I said, I'm playing great music. Are you having a good time? And he went, yeah. I said, done. We're good. You know, I love that feeling of intimacy in a club and stuff, but I love an audience. And you know immediately if you're connecting or not. If you suck, they'll let you know real quick.
Yeah.
I know that hindsight, as you mentioned previously, is 2020. I had seen you discussing, you were backstage at, gosh, I'm not sure what it might have been, maybe Woodstock, but you were with Mr. Crosby and you were watching Jimi Hendrix play. So I'm curious about any of these. I know that you had said that the Beatles and Paul McCartney really triggered you to want to go into music. Thinking back over all that you've seen and experienced, what really stands out to you that was in awe?
Well, I mean, there's so many things. The thing that you started with about Hendrix, there used to be a fairgrounds in the North San Fernando Valley called Devonshire Downs. And they would do gigs there. And I remember I was in college at the time. I think it was around 68. And Hendrix was playing there, and I went, and it was, in those days, security and stuff was not what it is now. I mean, you could just kind of wander around, and you know, it's like being in the pit area or something at the races. And I'm standing over on the side watching Hendrix play, and I look next to me, and David Crosby was standing next to me watching Hendrix too. And we said hello and all that. And then a few years later, next thing I know, I'm in the studio with, with Crosby and Nash and stuff. It's weird how it all goes around. And in 68 also, I went to Cal State Northridge. It was San Fernando Valley State College at the time. And Cream played in the gym. And I'm standing there, and all the hype was Clapton. And they opened with Tales of Brave Ulysses, and all of a sudden Jack Bruce opened his mouth, and I went, oh crap, he's the voice. I mean, it blew my mind. And I was an usher at the Hollywood Bowl when the Beatles played there. Wow. So I got to hear the Beatles live. Yeah. So there's so many benchmark moments like that, different things. When we played Nebworth with Phil Collins in 1990, it was one of those concerts where it was Pink Floyd and Page and Plant, McCartney, Elton John, Phil, Genesis. God, there were so many acts on that night. And I remember going into the canteen area, and I looked over, and sitting at a table is Paul and Linda. Wow. Eating lunch, and I just thought to myself, I've got to go say something to this guy. I mean, this is one of the major influences on my life. And I go walking towards him, and I got about 10 feet away, and he looks up, and he goes, wow, Lee Sklar, I always wanted to meet you. And I almost had a heart attack. It's a trip. This whole life is a trip. Every day I just find myself fascinated by the journey.
Well, yeah, that's
media links. We got about 60 seconds.
When I was watching your YouTube.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
I'll go. Sherry, go ahead. Take the last question.
Oh, no, go ahead, Brian. I'm sorry, but please, I recommend watch Leland Sklar on YouTube. It's amazing.
Please come.
For the audience, give you social media links.
Well, it's basically, I've got a Facebook channel that I'm constantly being thrown off of and blocked. I got kicked off of Twitter, but I think I might have reestablished a new account there. And I'm on Instagram, but I'm really focusing on my YouTube channel. That for me is the most enjoyable thing. And so come there. And then we have a new band called The Immediate Family. We've got our single is out, an EP coming out in October, and the album will be out beginning of the year. And Denny Tedesco, who made The Wrecking Crew, is doing a documentary film about us. And that'll be out the beginning of the year too.
Wow.
Lots
Good.
going on. And main thing is, I wish everybody to be safe. Watch out for yourselves, your families, your friends, and the community as a whole, because these are really, I know a number of people who've died. This is very dangerous times, and be smart about it. Just take good care of yourselves.
And with that, I'm going to end with this. Thank you so much, Leland, for being on. And Tony Tedeschi, I interviewed him for the documentary, The Wrecking Crew. I was hoping he would do something on that because he's a great filmmaker. And with his dad and Carol Kane and The Wrecking Crew in general, I recommend everybody see that. It's called The Wrecking Crew. The best musicians who did all the studio gigs on all the major albums. And it's a great documentary.
Yeah, they were amazing.
Nelson.
Amazing.
Out of Canada, I almost said Tennessee, Sherry. See, I'm getting you there ahead. Leland and nonstop Terri Marie Rodano. This is Brian Sebastian. Movie Reviews and More. Worldwide TV Network, I-2-247 out of Franklin, Tennessee. We will see you next week. Oh, and if you see someone without a smile, please give them one of yours because the world needs it.